Looking for a medieval fortress you can actually walk through with walls, towers, and narrow streets still intact? That's Carcassonne. This 2-day plan keeps everything in the right order, from the Citadel itself to the viewpoints outside the walls and into the lower town, so you're not doubling back or missing key spots. Stay through till the end for a few tips that'll make the trip smoother. Hit like, subscribe, and let's get into it. Day 1. Exploring the medieval citadel. Morning. Narbonne Gate. Starting your first day in Carcassonne means walking straight through the main entrance, and the Narbonne Gate is where you do that. The twin towers flanking you were built around 1280 and rise 30 meters high, tall enough that defenders had multiple floors to rain arrows down on anyone trying to break through. A guard room connects the two towers on the second floor, and below that, the gate had a drawbridge, a barbican in front, and enough defensive tricks to turn any attack into a nightmare. Before you walk under the arch, glance to your right. That carved figure on the column is Lady Carcasse. The statue you're looking at is a replica. The original 16th century version is tucked inside the castle. The legend goes that she tricked Charlemagne's army by fattening up the last pig in the city and hurling it over the walls, making them think the place was so well stocked they could afford to waste food. The story's complete fiction, but it stuck, and people love to say that's how Carcassonne got its name. Old Town Streets. Once you pass through the gate, the citadel opens in front of you. The streets are narrow, uneven, cobbled, and they twist in ways that make zero sense if you're used to modern grids. Don't just follow the crowd straight ahead. Peel off into one of the quieter side lanes where the foot traffic drops off. The stone buildings have wooden shutters that look like they haven't been replaced in centuries, and the alleys turn sharp corners. Some of them end abruptly, others spill into tiny squares you'd never spot from the main route. Walk these streets now before the bigger landmarks pull your focus, because this is where you actually feel what it was like to live inside defensive walls. Château Viewpoint. As you move deeper into the citadel, the Château Comtal starts to dominate the skyline. Before you go inside, stop at the viewing platform just outside the entrance. This is one of the few spots where you can see the full defensive structure from the outside. Stone walls stacked in layers, towers positioned to cover every approach angle, fortifications built to withstand prolonged sieges. It's also the cleanest photo angle you'll get without climbing a single flight of stairs. Late morning, Château Comtal and ramparts. The Tronqueville family built the Château Comtal in the 12th century, back when they were viscounts of Carcassonne and powerful enough to host troubadours and throw their weight around the region. That ended badly during the Albigensian Crusade when they backed the Cathars and lost everything. Most of what you're seeing inside is the work of architect Eugène Viollet-le-Duc, who restored the place in the 19th century. Entry runs about $13 to $19 depending on whether you visit in high or low season, and this is where you'll burn through the rest of your morning. Walk through the defensive corridors and courtyards, then climb up to the ramparts. The full circuit stretches 1.3 kilometers and takes you past 35 towers, and you're free to duck in and out of them as you go. The views shift constantly. Sometimes you're looking out over the Aude Valley, sometimes back into the citadel itself, sometimes toward the Pyrenees on a clear day. The layout of the whole fortress is built to slow attackers. Every turn, every narrow corridor, every staircase was designed to give defenders the upper hand. The stairs themselves are narrow and uneven, so keep your eyes down as you move between levels, because medieval builders cared about defense, not comfort. Insider tip. Your ticket includes access to the Lapidary Museum inside the castle, where the original Lady Carcasse statue is on display. Most people walk straight past it because they don't realize it's part of the same admission, but it's worth stepping inside to see the actual 16th century carving up close, rather than just the weathered replica outside the gate. Afternoon. Lunch at Le Bar Avant de la Cité. When the sun starts hitting the stone, you're ready for a break. Make your way to Rue du Plot for Le Bar Avant de la Cité. The front looks like a standard wine shop, but keep walking through the back garden. It's one of the few spots inside the walls where you're surrounded by ivy and mature trees instead of sun-baked masonry. I recommend the baked camembert for $19. It arrives hot in a wooden box with mountain ham and enough baguette to actually fill you up. For a more traditional plate, the duck confit is $25. The ground is covered in loose gravel and the tables are heavy timber. The service is efficient, focusing on getting food to the table rather than a formal ceremony. The Basilica of Saints Nazarius and Celsus. Once you've finished lunch, walk over to the southern side of the Citadel to find the Basilica of Saints Nazarius and Celsus. Entry is free, but the doors typically close between 12 p.m. and 2 p.m., so make sure your timing doesn't land you in that midday gap. Inside, you can see a massive clash of architecture. The nave, the long central section, is 11th century Romanesque, built with thick, heavy stone and small windows that keep the space dim. But as you walk toward the front, the style shifts abruptly to 14th century Gothic. The pillars become slender, the ceiling rises, and the solid stone walls are replaced by massive stained glass panels. It's a physical timeline of the city's wealth. They literally tore off the back of the old church to build a flashier, more modern version when the Gothic style became popular. The glass in the choir is some of the oldest in southern France, dating back to the late 1200s. Look for the Tree of Jesse window on the left side of the choir. The deep reds and blues are original 13th century glass and have survived better than almost any other window in the region. If there's service happening, you won't be allowed to wander into the choir area, so you'll have to view the windows from the back of the nave. Insider tip: hunt for the Pierre du Siege, or siege stone, tucked away in the right aisle near the sacristy. It's a 13th century carving depicting a 1209 siege of the city. I recommend getting close enough to see the catapults and chainmail. It's one of the only visual records from the actual time of the Crusades, and far more interesting than the modern plaques nearby. Late afternoon, Museum of the Inquisition. From the Basilica, head back toward the center of the Citadel to the Museum of the Inquisition. Admission is $14, and the entrance is marked by a large, dark wooden door that leads into the 17th century building. This isn't a lighthearted stop. The exhibits focus on the torture methods used during religious persecution in the region between the 12th and 14th centuries. The rooms are narrow and dimly lit, filled with heavy iron and wooden replicas of devices like the rack and the Iron Maiden. Each piece includes a description of how it was physically used to extract confessions from those accused of heresy. It's graphic and direct, showing you exactly how the Catholic Church maintained control during the Albigensian Crusade. The floors are uneven, and the ceilings are low in some basement sections, which adds to the building's naturally grim atmosphere. Insider tip: I recommend checking the small courtyard at the end of the exhibit. There's a wooden guillotine on display, but look closer at the stone walls surrounding it. You can still find the original mason's marks carved into the blocks from when the building was first constructed, which is a detail most people miss while looking at the hardware in the center of the yard. Walk the walls. Before you leave the Citadel for the day, get back out onto the Lys, the open space between the two massive sets of defensive walls. Accessing this area is free and doesn't require a ticket. Walking the perimeter of the outer wall covers about 3 kilometers, or roughly 2 miles, and gives you a clear view of the killing zone created by the double wall system. The inner wall is significantly higher than the outer one, which allowed for defenders on the inside to fire over the heads of their own men on the front line. As you walk, you'll notice the ground is a mix of packed dirt and loose, jagged stones, so watch your footing. Look for the different styles of masonry. The lower sections use large, square Roman blocks from the 3rd century, while the upper parts are smaller, rough medieval stones added 1,000 years later. It's the best spot to see the sheer scale of the fortifications without having to navigate the tighter corridors inside the castle itself. Dinner at La Marquière. Wrap up your day inside the Citadel by heading to Rue Saint-Jean for a table at La Marquière. The restaurant sits in an old 13th century house and feels far more grounded than the louder spots near the main gates. The dining room has low timber beams and thick stone walls that trap the heat, but there's a small walled-in patio at the back if you want a bit more air. This is where you go for the heavy regional staples. Look for the cassoulet. It arrives in a deep clay pot with a thick, dark crust on the top that you have to crack open to reach the white beans, local sausage, ham, and duck wings inside. It's a massive calorie-heavy meal that's been a local fixture for centuries. If you aren't up for the beans, the foie gras ravioli with porcini mushroom sauce is a solid alternative. Because the space is small and usually full, book a spot a day in advance to avoid being turned away. Expect dinner to cost between $45 and $65, including a main and a glass of wine. Day 2. Views, Newtown, and Riverside walks. Morning, Medieval City Viewpoint. Start your second morning by putting some distance between you and the fortress walls. Head out toward Chemin des Hortet on the western side of the city. Walking through the narrow streets is great for the history, but you need to step back to actually grasp the physical scale of the fortress. From this gravel path, the whole city sits on the hillside like a massive stone crown, and you can finally see both sets of defensive walls working together. Find the spot where the land dips slightly, giving you a clear sightline of the staggered towers. You'll see exactly how the inner wall rises high enough for defenders to shoot over the outer rim without hitting their own men. It's a literal cross-section of 13th century military engineering, showing exactly why an army would have looked at these walls and decided to turn around and go home. Walk the external loop. Once you've finished with the viewpoints, cut back toward the fortress to walk the Lys. This is the wide gap between the two main defensive walls that runs for about 3 kilometers or 2 miles around the entire city. It's a flat route, but the ground is mostly packed dirt and loose rock, so keep your eyes on the path to avoid rolling an ankle. Notice the masonry on the lower half of the inner wall? Those are huge, square blocks laid by Romans in the 3rd century. Right on top of them, the stones get smaller and rougher, where medieval builders patched things up 1,000 years later. You can see exactly where the original fortifications ended and where the 13th century engineers had to step in. It gives you a much better look at the actual thickness of these defenses than you get when you're navigating the narrow streets inside the city. Insider tip. When you reach the Pont Vieux on the west side, look out at the stone ramp. There are deep ruts worn into the ground from centuries of heavy supply carts being dragged up the incline. The slope is steep, and those old stones are polished smooth from use, so keep your weight forward or you'll be sliding the way back down the hill. Late morning, Pont Neuf. Once you've finished circling the walls, head down the hill toward the River Oud to find Pont Neuf. Even though the name translates to New Bridge, it's been standing since 1846 and offers the cleanest view of the Citadel rising over the water. Standing on the sidewalk here, the fortress looks like a massive stone crown sitting on the ridge, and you get a much better sense of the sheer vertical drop the medieval attackers had to deal with. The bridge has wide pedestrian paths, so you aren't fighting traffic while you're looking back at the skyline. If you have an extra few minutes, duck down to the dirt paths along the riverbank before you cross. The grass is thick and can get a bit muddy if there's rain overnight, but it's worth the detour to see the 14th century Pont Vieux arches lining up perfectly with the towers in the background. Afternoon, Bastide Saint-Louis. Cross the river and you'll walk straight into Bastide Saint-Louis, the area known as the Lower City. The translation is jarring. You leave the chaotic, twisting alleys of the medieval world and enter a perfect 13th century grid system. The streets are wide and straight, lined with 18th century townhouses featuring heavy wooden doors and ornate iron balconies. This is the actual heart of Carcassonne, where people live and work, so the energy is much more grounded than the castle heights. Aim for Place Carnot, the main square in the center. It's a massive open space with a fountain of Neptune in the middle and rows of plane trees providing actual shade. The pace here is much slower, so ditch the map and just wander the grid until you're ready for a break. Lunch at Le Blé Noir. When you need a break from the heavy stews of the Citadel, head over to Rue de Verdun for Le Blé Noir. It's a dedicated buckwheat creperie with a relaxed local feel and a stone-walled interior. The kitchen sticks to a tight list of organic regional fillings, which keeps quality high and food moving to tables without long waits. I recommend the complete galette for $13. It's a savory buckwheat crepe filled with egg, Emmental cheese, and local ham. The edges are crisp and buttery, while the center stays soft and nutty from the buckwheat. If you want something sharper, the goat cheese and honey galette for $15 uses local honey that cuts through the creamy cheese perfectly. Expect to pay between $18 and $25 for a main and drink. The portions look thin, but the buckwheat is incredibly filling and holds up well for a long afternoon of walking. Late afternoon, Canal du Midi. After you finish up in the Bastide, head a few blocks north to the Canal du Midi. This waterway was a massive 17th century project built to link the Mediterranean to the Atlantic, essentially creating a shortcut across France so merchants didn't have to sail all the way around Spain. The water is fed by a network of reservoirs in the Black Mountains, a clever bit of engineering that keeps the canal from drying out in the intense southern heat. The banks are lined with massive plane trees, creating a thick, shady canopy over the dirt paths. It's a total shift in energy from the Citadel. The air is cooler here, and the only thing moving is the occasional canal boat drifting through at a crawl. What I recommend is finding a spot on one of the benches near the lock system. It's the perfect place to just watch the water levels shift and take a break from the constant uphill climbs of the old town. Pont Vieux. When you're ready to head back toward the fortress, make sure you cross the river using Pont Vieux. While the modern bridge is better for wide skyline shots, this stone crossing dates back to the 14th century and is strictly for pedestrians. The arches are low and weathered, and as you walk across, the Citadel towers start to loom over you in a way that feels a lot more intimidating than the view from the main road. The stone surface is uneven and can be a bit slick if there is a heavy mist off the water, so watch your footing on the incline. It's a short crossing, but taking this route puts you right at the base of the steep climb back up to the main gates. You get a much closer look at the defensive walls reflecting in the Oud, which is worth the extra 5 minutes of walking. Insider tip: look for the small stone niches built into the sides of the bridge. These were originally refuges where people could step out of the way of heavy horse-drawn carts and cattle. They are perfect spots to duck out of the flow of foot traffic to grab a photo of the river without someone bumping into your shoulder. Carcassonne Park. Right after you step off Pont Vieux, head down into the park area that runs along the riverbank. After a day of navigating steep ramps and uneven stone, these flat, grassy paths are a great change of pace. There aren't any specific monuments to check off the list here, it's just a wide-open green space with the fortress as a massive backdrop behind the trees. This stretch works well for winding down before heading back into the busier streets. Follow the trails right along the water's edge where the reflection of the towers hits the Oud. It's the standout photogenic angle of the day. Evening, dinner at La Barbican. End the day back in the heart of the Citadel for a table at La Barbican. Tucked inside the Hotel de la Cité, the room has a serious medieval vibe with its heavy oak paneling and stained glass, but the atmosphere is actually quite relaxed. The Aubrac beef fillet is the standout here. It comes with foie gras and beef cheek, served alongside dauphinoise potatoes and seasonal truffles. If you're feeling daring, go for the roasted Mont Royal pigeon. It sounds a bit wild to eat birds you see in the square, but farm-raised pigeon is a local delicacy in this part of France and is way more tender and flavorful than you'd expect. Expect to pay between $100 and $140 for a menu, but the quality of the cooking and the view over the ramparts make it worth it. Grab a seat by the window if you can, and watch the fortress lights come on while you finish your wine. Useful info for spending 2 days in Carcassonne. Best time to visit Carcassonne. The best time to visit Carcassonne is from May through September, when daytime temperatures sit between 20 and 30 degrees Celsius, and you can comfortably walk both inside and outside the Citadel. July and August are the busiest months, especially around Bastille Day, when the fireworks over the fortress draw huge crowds. Spring and early fall offer a better balance, still warm but easier to move around. In winter, temperatures drop to around 5 to 12 degrees Celsius, and while it's quieter, many smaller spots inside the Citadel reduce hours or close. City airport tips. Carcassonne has its own small airport, Carcassonne Airport, located about 6 kilometers or 4 miles from the city center. The simplest option is a taxi, which takes around 10 to 15 minutes and usually costs between $15 and $20. There's also a local bus that connects the airport to the city, taking about 20 minutes for roughly $2, though schedules are limited. A more flexible option is flying into Toulouse-Blagnac Airport, about 90 kilometers or 56 miles away. From there, trains to Carcassonne take around an hour and cost about $15 to $25, running regularly throughout the day. Where to stay in Carcassonne? For a short stay, you've got two main options: inside the Citadel or in the lower town. Staying inside La Cité means you're right within the medieval walls, steps away from the main sites. It's quieter in the evening once day visitors leave, but hotels are limited and usually range from $150 to $300 per night. The Bastide Saint-Louis, the lower town, is more practical and better for restaurants and transport connections. Hotels here typically fall between $90 and $180, and you're still only about 2 kilometers or 1.2 miles from the Citadel. If you want something quieter with the views of the fortress, look just outside the walls. You'll find small guest houses and boutique stays in the $120 to $220 range. How to get around Carcassonne? Carcassonne is compact, and most of what you'll see over the 2 days is within walking distance. The Citadel itself is entirely pedestrian, with cobbled streets and some uneven surfaces, so comfortable shoes matter more than anything else. The walk between the lower town and the Citadel is about 2 kilometers or just over a mile and takes around 25 minutes on foot. There are local buses with single tickets costing about $2, but for this itinerary, you won't need them much. Taxis are available but rarely necessary unless you're arriving with luggage or heading to the airport. Where to eat in Carcassonne? Carcassonne is split between the medieval Citadel and the lower town. Inside the walls, you're paying for the location, so picking the right spot is key to avoiding the tourist traps. Inside La Cité, head to La Table des Francs Poulet for something properly elevated. This 2 Michelin-starred spot at the foot of the ramparts focuses on modern French cuisine. The menu shifts with the seasons, but you'll find incredible dishes like the Silver Bocuse beef fillet with black truffle or their signature oyster tartare. Lunch menus start around $65, while dinner set menus go from $180 to $235. It's the city's highest level dining, so you'll definitely need a reservation. For something traditional without the massive price tag, find Le Escargot inside the Citadel. This spot sticks to regional classics done right. The cassoulet is the real deal here. Rich, slow-cooked beans with duck. Or you can grab the grilled duck breast skewer with raspberry caramel. Mains stay between $22 and $34. It's one of those reliable spots where the food actually matches the historic setting, and they have a great tapas menu if you just want a quick bite. In the lower town, Le Jardin en Ville is the best move for a vegetarian-friendly meal. It's tucked away in a quiet courtyard that feels worlds away from the busy streets. The menu's all about fresh, seasonal plates with solid plant-based options like their mushroom risotto or fresh vegetable tarts. Mains run between $20 and $28. It's much calmer and a perfect break if you've had enough of the heavy, meat-focused food inside the Citadel walls. And that's Carcassonne done! It's one of the best preserved fortified cities in Europe, and once you've walked the walls and seen how everything's laid out, it's easy to understand why people come here in the first place. If this helped you plan your trip, hit like and subscribe for more guides like this. And if you're continuing through the south of France, the Marseille guide is right here.